Hey Dulles family, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm the student pastor here. Whether you're joining us in person or online, we're super excited that you're here. And we say that every week, but we really do mean that. If you're watching from a screen in another state or even another country, we believe that you are just as much a part of the Dulles family as the people who are sitting in the Lightridge auditorium right now. And if this is your first time here, welcome. We're super excited that you've joined us today. Okay, I just got a quick few announcements. The first one we announced last week. We are starting our chili kit collection. And the heart behind this really stemmed from just the thought that there are people in our immediate area, in our communities, people who live maybe across the street from you or in just kind of surrounding places that may not know when they're gonna have their next meal. They may not even have one today. And that just didn't sit right with us, especially on Super Bowl Sunday, which is when those are gonna be distributed, when we have all these different snacks. We're smoking, ribs and brisket for like 6 hours. We have a ton of Chex Mix and different things, and we know that there are families who are not gonna be eating that day. So this is our stepping into really what is a big part of the heart of Dulles, to care for and love those around us. So we've already collected about 40 chili kits, and our goal is 100. So we're already like pretty close to the halfway mark, and we really believe that if we all rally around this, we can get to 100. You can drop off the kits in person at Lightridge, or we have drop-off points in South Riding and in Aldi. You can look at our app for those drop-off points, and you can also sign up for chili kits on that app, and it's gonna tell you what to include and things like that. If you're with us here today in Lightridge, outside there's a collection table, there's a QR code, super simple, open up your camera, scan it, it'll take you right to the sign up page for all the information that you need. Now the last date to drop off kits is February 6th, so keep that in mind. That following Sunday, February 13th, is Super Bowl Sunday, and we're really excited. We're doing something really cool, kind of going along with the same chili theme. We are going to be having a chili cook-off competition. It's gonna be happening right after church on February 13th in the Lightridge cafeteria. So we're looking for about 20 competitors. I know that a few people have already signed up. So if you know that you make a good chili, or even if you have a friend that makes a really good chili, take their recipe, sign up. You just gotta bring it in the crock pot, plug it in at Lightridge High School's cafeteria. We'll have church. Afterwards, we'll go all into the cafeteria. Judges will do their thing. We will have prizes. It's gonna be a really good time. So mark that down on your calendars as well. This past Thursday night was the first group, the first gathering of Alton's Family Matters Lab. If you are still interested in joining, you can still do it. This is your extension. If you want to join, you can email altonb@dulleschurch.org, or you go to our app and sign up for it there. They had a really great discussion on Thursday night. They meet every Thursday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. All right, guys, that's all the announcements I have for you today. I'm super glad again that you are here, and I hope that you enjoy this next message from Brad and Amy in the Can't Relate series. Love you guys so much. See you next time.
Week 3.
Here we go.
You've done great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you've been. I said that last week, but I really.
It's been good. Better than I expected.
You've done great.
Yeah, I think we're about to start talking about one of the hardest journeys we've been on, right? Parenting. When you say.
When you say that, I would argue. The serious point I would argue is whether marriage has been a harder journey or parenting.
Yeah.
The joke I try to make is whether Mackenzie was harder to parent or Reagan. Oh my gosh.
Woo! Yeah.
We could debate that for a long time.
Because they're so different.
Yeah, so listen, as just a quick review on our baseline in this series, there's many places in Scripture. John 10 is the one we chose to show us that, first of all, Jesus came to restore life, to give us life. We also believe we have a very real enemy whose intent is destruction and division. John 10 makes this super clear. And we believe this as a couple, we believe it as a church, that most of that restoring by Jesus or destruction by our enemy happens in the space of relationships. Okay, now we've been saying that for the last couple of weeks, but I want to add this today as we focus on parenting. Many of the personal inner struggles, not all, but many of the internal struggles that adults have today are related in some way to their parents, something their parents did, something their parents didn't do, something that was modeled in our childhoods. And, whether it's insecurities or self-promoting or defensiveness, expectations, unhealthy expectations in marriage, a lot of these things, not all of them, but a lot of them are linked to our parents. And so adults all over the world are trying to figure themselves out and figure out their stress and anxiety. And a lot of it goes back to our childhoods and what was modeled for us. Yeah. So this is what I want to add to our baseline here, at least for today. As much as we adults would be quick to blame our parents, to blame mom or dad for what we're struggling with or the habits or the attitude issues that we have, two things are true. First of all, Jesus came to change people from the inside out, and he's been doing it for 2,000 years and is still doing it. And the other thing we want to say is that parenting is hard. Parenting's hard for every parent, and that includes your parents. Parenting was hard for your parents. And so I think we can find as adults a little bit of healing in the empathy. The quickest way to soften an adult's heart towards their mom or dad, regardless of the past or what, the best way to soften our hearts toward mom and dad is to become a parent. It really can make us empathetic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call my mom at age 22 and tell her I was so sorry.
Yeah, when you apologize to your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
you realize.
When we had.
Yeah,
we started down the parenting path.
Yeah. Yeah. So parenting is no joke. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a hard job that's 24/7 for years. Like it never stops. Even though our kids are grown, we're still parenting in many, many ways.
We have a friendship relationship with our girls.
Yeah.
But that's true. There are moments, probably still every day,
Yeah.
phone calls, things that happen where we are still, which we're going to talk about, directing them back to what we believe is healthy, a healthy response. Yeah. Or don't respond yet. Let's think about this, that kind of parenting.
So, I'm sure it's probably easy. We don't want you guys to interpret that we have not had a struggle with parenting, just because our kids are involved in the church, and just because our kids are pastors' kids, there's such a stigma, I think, with that. Very much bad stigmas in many ways. Our kids were normal kids just like your kids. Struggle with the same things. We had to really work hard to get them to be the adults that they are today. So we don't have it all together just because of where our kids are and what they're doing with their lives and how it might be a perception of some,
Well, I think if we're qualified to talk to this, it's because of the struggles we've had as parents.
Yeah.
And we did not expect our kids to somehow be closer to God magically because their dad is a pastor. We expected in many ways life to be harder for them.
Yeah.
And
we saw that really initially early on with Mackenzie, our oldest, who's 23 now. At age 1, maybe not even 1, seeing already the nature in her to want to be defiant, to want to live her own life at age 1, be selfish and choose not to listen. I remember at age 1 in our townhouse, we had a VCR that's dating ourselves. And she would love to try to crawl over to that and put her hand in the little pocket where you put your VHS tapes and stick her fingers in there. And, and we, from the very beginning, were like, nope, that is not something she's going to be allowed to touch. And we started having to train her to listen to us when we would tell her no. And I remember me standing in the kitchen while she's crawling over the VCR, and she looked at me dead in the face and took her little hand and just inched it.
After you'd said no.
After I'd said no. Inched it ever so closely, like, is Mom really going to follow through with this? Like, does she mean what she said? And just that look in her face at age 1, I knew, oh my gosh.
You would say no, or I would say no, and she would move a little bit closer, staring at us, and her hand would move closer, and you'd say Mackenzie, or I would say Mackenzie. And we even discussed whether to take the VCR out of the room, and we decided no. We're going to teach her that this is for her protection.
That's making life easy to remove things that are going to be something that tempt her.
Yeah, and that actually relates to maybe where we're going here with this. I think it's normal, and we certainly made things safe around the house. Anything that could be a hazard, of course, but there were some things we decided we're not going to remove this from the room at this age just because
it'd be easier for us.
It'd be easier for us, or we don't expect our child to obey. And I know that that's something that a lot of parents tell us that they choose, and when we sit with parents, that's an example we give. All right, here's a question. We're gonna start with a question today because it relates to a lot of what we wanted to talk about, and I think we've really framed a lot of this today around trying our best to answer this question. Okay, for the parenting talk that you have coming up, I'd like to ask a question. I feel that I'm constantly struggling with being patient with the kids. I also cannot seem to find the right balance between honoring their feelings as a person and disciplining them properly. I try to incorporate God into our daily home life, but somehow that falls off the priority list too when we're just trying to make it through the evening until bedtime. Any advice you could give would be...
We've been there.
Oh my gosh.
Making it to bedtime was our goal every day.
Yeah.
When we were little.
I think, and we were tempted, I think we believed we were just the only ones, like, we're parents that are struggling to just survive the evening and get our kids to sleep finally.
Yeah.
And the dirty little secret is I think every parent struggles with that.
Yeah. This is such a great question, and it's like you're saying, it's universal for all parents. So this might not really sound exciting, and it's not easy, but I know we really established in our house the culture we wanted to create for the girls, our kids, was first-time obedience. And, obedience might sound like a really strong word, but for us, we really felt like we wanted to establish that culture in them and that heart in them to listen to what their parents are instructing, because we knew if they didn't listen when they were young, it was going to be a lot harder for them to listen when they were older, and we did not want to have a huge mess on our hands when they were teens.
This came from some things we read. This came from some conversations we had with parents that were a little older than us who had toddlers or elementary age, middle school kids. So this really there may be some of you just kind of tempted to tune out on this point. It may not seem very appealing or earth-shattering, but I'm just telling you, this was one of the major convictions that we had that led to a major win for us. And when I say win, I don't mean it was easy, but this was a win, and we're going to try to unpack this for you here. And I want to start with Patrick Lencioni. So Patrick Lencioni, I've told you this before, is a leader that I love. I've followed him for years and years. This is maybe one of his most highly touted books to business executives and corporations around the world. He trains executives at Fortune 50 companies. So The Advantage, which is one of his more recent books, he says this. Now, don't tune out because I'm citing a business or leadership book here. This is fascinating what he does here. He lists healthy characteristics of any organization, what a healthy business or organization looks like. And he gives examples. There's minimal politics in a healthy organization, minimal confusion, high morale, high productivity, low turnover. Okay, so in that context, he says this about families. He says, whenever I list these qualities for leaders or executives, I usually get one of the following reactions, and sometimes both. Often, they laugh quietly. The executives will laugh quietly in a nervous, almost guilty kind of way, or they barely sigh like parents do when they hear about a family where the kids do what they're told the first time they're asked. In either case, it's as though the executive or the leader is thinking, wouldn't that be nice? Or can you imagine? Lencioni often relates, he consistently relates healthy businesses and organizations to healthy families. He goes on to say this. He says the same phenomenon can be seen in families. Healthy families, the ones where parents give their children discipline, affection, and time, almost always improve over the years, even when they lack many of the advantages and resources that money can buy. Unhealthy families, the ones without discipline and unconditional love, will always struggle, even if they have all the money, tutors, coaches, and technology they could ever want.
Wow.
So this, I think, kind of sets the stage for talking a little bit about this conviction that we developed very young, where we expected our girls to obey the first time.
And that takes us actually straight to Scripture. And, we always want to turn what we do, what our motives are and our goals are for our family, to where Jesus is leading us from Scripture. So we're going to go to Ephesians 6, where it talks about parents training in love. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, with a promise. So he's actually giving us this commandment you need to honor, but there's a promise that comes with it if you do that. That promise is so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on earth.
Yeah, and the going well with you as the child means so that you'll prosper.
Yeah.
In many ways, you're going to prosper by honoring your parents. And the promise that you may enjoy long life on earth, I mean, that is the case for many people, is actually physically long life. But essentially what Paul's getting at here, he's quoting the Old Testament, is so that you'll avoid unnecessary pain, unnecessary like destruction or destructive behaviors.
And following through and teaching your kids first-time obedience is a pain. It's a pain to you. It's hard work.
It's no joke.
It's disruptive. It can disrupt a conversation you're having with someone where you have to stop and you need to pull your child aside and say, this behavior is not tolerated. If this continues, this is what will happen. It can happen when you're on the phone. You have to stop and take care. It can happen when you're finally at the end of your day, you got the kids, what you think they're in bed. You're down here on the sofa, and then you hear some, stuff going on upstairs.
Or after,
you have to get up, and or at a grocery store. I remember many times us having to take the girls to the bathroom and have a conversation, or out to the car.
We would go out to the car. We would remove them. We would remove them from the store or from the scene where the fit or the tantrum or whatever's happening. And that, I remember in Costco, I think, one time, you were like, tag, it's your turn. And I was like, you're it. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're halfway. I felt like I was 14 football fields away from our car. And it was such a pain. Sometimes we would do that twice. Mm-hmm. We would go into a store, and twice we'd have to pull Mackenzie or Reagan to the front or to the bathroom or to the car to talk or to give the consequence.
Yeah. And this actually happened to me as a kid. I will never forget.
How many times?
A lot. I was.
That was the question.
Yeah, my sister was the rule follower.
But I know what you're going to say.
I grew up in a very traditional church. We had wooden pews, which were super fun to slide on, by the way, especially after they got dusted. My dad was the choir director in our church, and I remember on a Sunday night sitting down probably 4 rows from the front, and my dad was up on the stage leading our church in a hymn, and the choir was behind him, and I was sitting with my best friend Jenny Martin, who came to Dulles for quite a while, and then they moved out of the area, and she and I were monkeying around, and fooling around and misbehaving. And
like during church, you mean?
During the song that my dad is leading.
Okay.
And her parents were in the choir behind my dad. So we had no parental guidance with us whatsoever, which was a mistake from the beginning, in my opinion. But my dad stopped the song and looked at our pastor and said, "Excuse me, Pastor, I need to go take care of..."
This is in front of the whole church.
This is in front of the whole church. And I need to instill some disciplinary action or something. I don't remember his words. But he marched himself off the stage, grabbed me, and I remember after I hear this that Jenny's parents said, "Man, I hope he gets Jenny too." So he did. He took Jenny out and took us downstairs, and what preceded,
Your
I
face.
probably can't.
I would love
controversial
to
now, but
have seen your face when he interrupted in the church.
I mean, and what that spoke to me was like, man, my dad disrupted our church service to come and put me in my place and tell me how I needed to behave.
Yeah, I've got a similar story that comes to mind where I just said something really cocky when in Colt League baseball. I struck out at the end of an inning. A kid in our church pinch hit in the 7th inning and won the game for us. He hit a walk-off double. And in church the next day, our parents were all talking. We were standing there, and I said to the kid, "That was a lucky hit." And we got in the car, and my dad was processing this in the car on the way home. He so was not okay with arrogance or pride in our house. By the time we got to our driveway, he had decided we were going to leave, he and I, and go back across town to this family's house, made me knock on the door, and I had to apologize, not just to Steve, my teammate, who had the awesome hit. I had to apologize to his parents.
Oof.
So I guess we're looking back at instances that really influence kind of this conviction we have as parents.
Yeah.
It is hard work. And when you get home from work and you're ready to chill or have dinner, catch up on Sports Center, and you've got to deal with something from that day, it's so easy to punt. It's so easy to,
We'll do it next time.
We'll do it next time.
Yeah, and that just compounds, and you've got problems.
And that was really kind of my tendency. I would sort of like,
You were the soft one.
you
still
always
are.
called me the softie.
Yeah.
And I would say, "Babe, I would use
Mercy.
words like mercy or let's just, and
give
you
her
would say,
mercy.
"No, Brad, that will end up teaching them." We're actually teaching them. If we're not consistent, we're teaching them we're not consistent. Yeah. Okay, so effective discipline, we've always said, should be felt. It should be a felt loss. If it's effective and it's good discipline, your child should feel the loss, whether that's the loss of time or the loss of a privilege.
But it hit him where it hurts, essentially. Like,
Yeah,
like
and when
the
you-
punishment fit the crime, kind of. Like, we would find things.
You said hit them where it hurts. That's
No.
that's not what we want to.
I
maybe
mean,
not the best.
emotionally.
Yeah, right. A lost privilege, a lost possession, time, doing something they enjoy. And it can be different for every child. We had a rude awakening in realizing, wow, Reagan doesn't respond to the same kinds of consequences that Mackenzie did. And that made parenting, we just felt like, good Lord, this is even harder than we
Let's
thought.
Make this concise.
I've got here that the result is not simply about you being happy as the parent, you having peace, but more importantly, it's about them growing into the kind person who respects, the person who loves others, type of young person, an adult someday. And it's really about their happiness and their peace. Okay, so the story of Ken's at 1 doesn't mean she was evil or defiant. Well, no, I guess she was defiant.
For sure.
Or rebellious. She's just a bad kid. It simply shows the universal truth that we learned early on, that every person, every child is designed by God, is hardwired for independence, to move toward independence. And even at the age of 1, children are already trying to become independent. They're moving toward independence. And this isn't a bad thing. We're designed this way. It's actually a good thing. Parents exist to guide children toward independence. And I don't know that when we talk to parents, I think that's lost in a lot of people's parents' goals or perspectives of parenting. A large role that we play as parents is moving our children towards independence, not just a great college or great opportunities or a high-paying job someday. We're actually guiding them towards independence. That's what you should be guiding them towards. That's what your parents should have been guiding you toward. Now, I could get into the weeds here on the very first chapters of Scripture. I'm going to save a lot of this for parents who want to talk to us about this. Yeah. But we see this in the very first pages in the creation story. God designed us as humans to be independent. He didn't design us as robots. He didn't program us to do exactly what he wants us to do. He made us creatures of choice. Yeah. The irony is the best choice, the choices that work well are choosing dependence on God, dependence on others, on one another, and yet we're made independent. We see this with the trees. All the trees of the garden were good, except for one. One was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eating of that tree was the choosing of independence that is self-serving independence. But a big takeaway for me, I remember years ago in learning that the story of the Garden of Eden, the power in the story is that God created us to be people who independently would choose him and choose love.
Yeah. So I think as their mom, I always had a picture in my mind of what I wanted our girls to be at certain ages. So, starting off, sleeping through the night and all that, but then moving to like age 5 and age 8 and 13 and 15 and 21. Like, I had these pictures in my mind of how I wanted them to relate to others, love others, behave, their attitudes.
And we would talk about this a lot.
And so then I would set up goals for how am I going to achieve that for a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and because that looks different as they grow. So one thing I really know that we focused on was the privilege that our kids had and have to be in our family. Our family was established before they were even born. So it established with you and I getting married. It didn't start and wasn't established when our first baby was born. So we really wanted to instill that privilege of them being allowed to be in our family, being chosen to be in our family.
Yeah, and so many parents, when they reach out or say, hey, can we talk? Or hey, we're struggling. What we'll hear is that they have set their children as the center of their family, and the family revolves around the needs of the child, the opportunities for the children.
Which is setting them up for having that concept and that thought their whole life, that the world revolves around them. And, that even comes down to, the first time obedience, having them respect you when they're speaking. All adults, like, that's something if they can respect us in their way they communicate, they're going to respect their teachers at school, people at church, their friends' parents, all of those relationships. Like, we just hit that one after the other.
And siblings. Mm-hmm. So it also plays out in that if your family doesn't revolve around your children, we really believe that that's an unhealthy makeup. And we talk to parents who defend that. They think that's love. Like, well, if we're being good parents, we're going to give our children everything or most of what they want or feel like are missing in their lives. We think that's the trajectory towards entitlement. And you see this play out with siblings. We expected our daughters to treat each other as a valuable member of the family. I get to be part of this family. I feel that way. Mm-hmm. I feel that I have the privilege of being a part of this family. Well, I want my daughters to treat one another that way. And that really kind of was the center of sibling arguments when they fought with each other and still do to this day.
And, when we talked a little bit ago about finding punishment fit the crime, like if there was a situation where one of the girls was being disrespectful or mean or unkind to their sister, we for a week would take away the best friend, because I would say to the girls, would you treat your best friend this way? And they'd say no. I said, well, you have no right to treat your sister that way. She is your best friend initially first, And if you can't treat your
Yeah.
sister this way, then you don't get your best friend for a week. So that was like me finding a way to, they can relate to this and what they've chosen.
Yeah, so this ties to the point about independence. I'm going to talk for a second here about the discipline drag. It can be such a drag to consistently be disciplining your children. And the great news is that the more consistent you are now, the less work you'll have to do later. And I don't want to say it becomes easy, but it sort of does. It becomes easier later when you're consistent with discipline now. It can be such a drag. If there's one thing I would stress to you that as being absolutely crucial as a parent is you should help your kids see and hear and feel that you're expecting their independence. You're not holding them back from becoming independent. You're actually moving them towards independence. You're leading them in that direction. The key is introducing them to the independence that you see for them even before they can see it. So this is an example for a certain appropriate age, but we introduced our girls to alcohol. We decided they're going to be introduced to alcohol. I mean, unless they live as hermits or in some kind of silo or something, someone is going to introduce our girls to alcohol. We want it to be us.
Yep.
And we would talk to them about where alcohol is used to try to be popular or to try to be cool. There's settings where alcohol is used as medicine or to cover up hurt. We're teaching our girls this at 11, 12, 13 years old. We even had them taste alcohol, and we knew they wouldn't like it. And they were like, we knew that when they're introduced or they're in a setting where alcohol is in front of them, if we've already unpacked it with them, they're going to come home and process things they've seen or questions they have. Another example is, this was, a little bit later, I guess, late middle school, early high school years. The holding the line on, let's say 9 p.m. No, sweetheart, we didn't say 9:30. I know you want to stay out till 9:30. We're saying 9 o'clock, but I'll tell you this, if you respect this now, and if you do this well now, I believe this time next year, you won't be out till 9:30, but probably 10 o'clock.
Okay.
We're actually introducing more independence to them that they're not even focused on. They're thinking 9:30. I want to get mom and dad to stretch to 9:30. We're helping them see if you can be part of this family and respect this and what we think is age appropriate for you now, we're actually telling you we're already talking about when 10 o'clock will happen.
And
when
they're
you'll be out till 10.
see then that we're working with them, we're not against them, we're working to essentially give them what they're desiring, but in a very healthy way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so this is big for me. Maybe this is the most important thing I would stress to parents. I think I've settled into that in a lot of these conversations that I find myself in. I think this has maybe become the big takeaway that I just could not stress more. When parents are when they're struggling and they want to talk, they say something along the lines of, oh my gosh, he or she, they're just giving me so much crap. Or I stop my work and tell them no. Or you can't talk to your mother that way. Or I feel like what I hear often in parents is the frustration. They're responding out of frustration. They're stopping their work in order to yell no. Or here we go again, or get back to your room, and I think if we're not careful, and Amy and I certainly have done this. We did this, we caught ourselves doing it, we would talk about it, you would see me doing it, I'd see you doing it, parenting out of frustration. When you are responding to your child's behavior or attitude or whatever the circumstance is that's not okay in your family, it's not a part of your family makeup, but they're doing it. When you respond with a frustrated reaction toward bad attitudes, bad behavior, by telling them stop or get back to your room, if you're not careful, you're going to be communicating to them that you're not supporting their independence. What they're going to interpret is, And it's easy. The younger the child is, the easier it is for them to interpret. Mom or dad are against my identity. They're actually against me as a person.
They're holding me back.
They're holding me back.
Yeah.
So moms can create resentment too. I'm not leaving moms out of this point. Moms can create frustration in children. But generally, I believe dads do this much more than moms do. I'm generalizing here, but this is just after talking to so many different parents. And I want to read the next verse. Amy read in Ephesians 6, the first few verses. I want to read verse 4. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Don't just say no, get back to your room. I've talked to so many dads who will tell you, I thought that was my role. My role is to step in or intervene when they've stepped out of line again. And so they order or bark the get back to your room, or you can't talk to your mom that way in this house. And they give the consequence without the training. Where peace comes into these stressful parenting moments is when you do the hard work, the extra work of training. Explaining when they're ugly, when they're selfish, when they disobey, teaching them the effect that attitude or that behavior is having on someone else, or on the mother, or on the sibling, or what neighbors across the street think. Training them to apologize well. When my dad put me in the car and drove me across town, I thought I was going to puke. I could not believe I was having to do this. And there are other examples of that kind of situation where my parents just said, no, never. This is never okay in this house. So you're going to go and make this right. And I would be like, Dad,
they force you to take ownership of that, which is huge.
Absolutely.
Huge parental win.
I remember saying to my dad, I don't know what to say. Ring the doorbell. Brad, stretch out your finger. Ring the door. But what do I say? And teaching me, yeah, the words matter, Brad, but what matters more is that they see that you understand you hurt someone. Or you processing that with our girls, I think, has that not been the most important thing we've done?
It's been huge. It's been huge for their relationships with each other, with us, with their peers, with family members, with friends' parents. Like, that respect was huge. You walk into your friend's house and you say, hello, whoever, miss whatever, Mr., and then you thank me for having me over today. Like, you have a conversation with them. And
yeah.
That wasn't ingrained or wasn't an instinct, especially Mackenzie, who's a really shy kid. Reagan would just talk to a fence post, but it was a struggle for her.
I'm anticipating people listening right now are thinking what we used to think. Like, Brad and Amy, I was hoping you were going to give us some kind of pointers to make parenting easier. This sounds like more work. And the truth is, this is more work. Taking the time to teach and train, like Paul is telling us here in Ephesians, tell stories. Mm-hmm. Help your child feel empathy towards the person they've made sad. That takes time, but I'm telling you the payoff is parenting becomes easier.
Right?
And there's more laughter. You end up laughing with your kids. Your kids end up being responsible in ways where they're teaching you.
Yeah. And I think that actually jumps down. I wanted to jump to this because we're kind of talking about the heart. I truly believe our girls' behavior was a direct result of what was in their heart. And I always have encouraged moms who've come to me and asked for advice or questions. I have a lot of young moms in my life with the preschool.
This is good.
You're essentially training their heart. You're not just telling them no or just correcting behavior. It's all about what's in their heart that's coming out, the reasons behind the decisions and choices they're making, even as a toddler, and that goes all the way up to the teenage years. In Luke 6, it says, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. So whatever's in the heart is what's going to come out of the mouth. And that can be sass, that can be disobedience, it can be ugliness, defensiveness. It can be many forms. But whatever is in that heart is what's going to come out. Proverbs 22 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, sure, there are situations where later in teenage years or young adults, those kids make decisions. You know, you have trained them what you feel like is the right way. There are certainly those cases where things could go, you know. But overall, generally speaking, God says train them up, and that means starting when they're young. Train them up in the way that they should go.
And not departing from it sometimes means coming back, like coming back to it.
Yes.
Oh, I blew it, or oh, this was ugly. I'm coming
I've got to come back and own
to
this and accept the responsibility for what the choice that I make.
Well, stressing the heart, I just want to get to the heart of what every child is craving. I don't want to be presumptuous about your child or children in any way except this one. I'm going to be confident enough to tell you that I am pretty sure I know what your child is craving. And the one thing you need to do and can do to fill and shape your child more than any other thing you'll do as a parent. And it's this: awaken your kids to you dreaming for them and about how unique they are. Even a child who's struggling with some kind of behavior or something, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm beating my head against the wall here. He's not learning this or she's not learning this. Even in those moments, teach your kids, help them to see consistently that you're dreaming for them. You actually believe in them, that they're unique, different than any of their siblings in certain ways. That's not comparing. It wasn't setting my girls against each other, never. But I would tell Mackenzie how unique she was. Reagan doesn't have this gift or this part of her personality. Your mom doesn't, Mackenzie. I don't know if I know anybody. I don't know if I know a single person who has this trait like you do, Mackenzie. Go on milkshake dates. Go to the Air and Space Museum. Take your kids, I would say schedule it for times where they're anticipating, this time with mom or dad, who are going to pour dreams into me again, and they're going to cheer me on about how unique I am. And sometimes be spontaneous. You know, when you're scheduling it, the kids are looking forward to it. When you're spontaneous, it's a surprise. Take your kids places, even just a walk around the pond, where you're not just asking them how's it going in school or what's new, but you're intending to tell them something that is a dream that you have for them.
And from that comes a conversation. Like, they're going to open up and soften, and you want to try to get your kids to talk, especially when they're 13 or 14. That's the best way to do it, is pouring into them, and then it just softens them and out it comes.
That's absolutely true. And someone eventually is going to give your kids what they crave. They're going to give them attention. They're going to tell them they're unique. Whether it's genuine or not, they're going to say flattering words. Maybe it's for selfish gain on the friend's part. Someone is going to come along and give your kids what they need, the attention that they're craving. Why not be you? Why not be mom and dad, so that when the kids are struggling or they do develop friends or they are at a party, they're always going to come back to you. Our girls generally have done that. They've come back to us and said, hey, help me process this. Or because they know that our goal for them is not to hold them back or say no to them. Our ultimate goal for them is everything we see them becoming in life, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, and I really, with their hearts being trained, I wanted them to have that heart to want to listen, obey, honor us, honor their friends, honor their sister, because that's what Jesus was asking of them, not because it was something we just made them do or because we were asking and that was required in this house. Because I knew if they grew up thinking that's why they were making these decisions, I knew that wouldn't stick. If they knew because it was what Jesus wanted for them and because it was pleasing to him and this is what he says in his word about it, that was going to stick, and they were going to walk in life through their whole life and all their relationships with the same thought.
Okay, for time.
Yeah, I wanted to... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to just reread this part of the question that was brought in. I love this.
Yeah.
I try to incorporate God into our daily home life, but somehow that falls off the priority list too when we're just trying to make it through the evening and get to bed.
We can relate to that too.
Any advice would be greatly appreciated. So real quick, a couple quick things, and I want to open myself up to questions later, having coffee, whatever. We can't hit everything today. Of course, there's so much into parenting, but a quick thing I'll say is we established what we called fireside chats, family fireside chats, and it was one night a week in our calendar. And it still pops up that way. It's funny. We started around the fireplace. I think it was winter time. But then in summer, when we couldn't have the fireplace on, we'd put a candle in the middle of the table. And we would just we'd turn lights off, make it nice and like have some ambiance.
Usually around dinner.
Around dinner time.
We did this while we were eating.
Would talk about, ask the girls a question about God. Or, hey, do you guys have a question? Or have you thought about this, about where you see Jesus working? Like, what was good that Jesus did for you today, or in a friend or something? Like, get them to have a conversation. And that is really starting just them recognizing where God is in their everyday life at a young age. And it can be 10 minutes, but it's also incorporating your dinner. So then if you're rushed through dinner and then by the time you get through bath time, there's not that time, you can kind of combine two things together, which helps with time management.
Yeah, and I would say if this seems intimidating, if faith is new to you, if church is new to you as a parent, and you're like, I don't know where to begin with faith conversations with my kids, I would just suggest something like this. Tweak your question to be something like, what's one thing you learned about God this week in church? It's amazing the conversations we would have with the girls at different ages, even today.
Yeah.
Even today, that question will lead into 30-minute conversations. Or you can ask your child, having no idea what they're going to say, where do you see God at work in your life this week? What's something God's doing in your life? That conversation doesn't need a lot of guidance. It just becomes good for everybody.
Time. And if dinner and bedtime is chaotic, which I totally remember that, use your car. Like, turn off the TVs in the car, turn off the music, and have a quick little conversation when you're driving to ballet. Yeah. Use those moments and take those moments to your advantage of how much you can pour into your kids in a brief amount of time.
I would add to this, too, as a takeaway, consistency with spiritual community over filled schedules, trying to cram lots of opportunities in front of your kids. An instinct that parents have, and we had it, was we've got to give our children every opportunity possible, usually in the way of sports or lots of activities. And I'm telling you, it suffocates so many families. Families sit, I can't exaggerate how many times parents have sat with tears in their eyes trying to figure out the disconnect, the emotional disconnect at home. And what we find is that God, it's just sort of lost in the home. Like, we don't have any kind of core sense of God's role in us as a family. And that leads to finding out that they're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, there's so many things, and Sunday mornings get drowned out. And listen, we're not against sports. I grew up playing sports.
Me too.
I'm a sports fanatic. This is a big weekend in the NFL. At some point, you've got to draw a line and say, our family being in spiritual community together is going to far exceed any kind kind of temporary opportunity we give them on a sports team.
Temporary. They're not lasting.
They really are. Parents are thinking in middle school about college scholarships, sports scholarships. And the regret, so many parents have regret, like, I don't know that my child really has a sense of God's role in their life, but they might be able to play baseball for a year in college. And they say this with regret. I would just say, hold up the value of, we're going to do church together. We're going to learn about God together. We're going to do this in spiritual community, and we're going to protect it. We're going to protect that time.
Value that, yeah. We've got a lot more to hit, but
yeah, we're kind of at the end of our time. We could do this for
like
here.
6 weeks.
I wanted to say to parents who are older, your kids are older, or maybe you're a parent that carries some regret, or you're hearing some of this, and maybe some of this resonates with you, and you're like, okay, my kids aren't 4 or 5 years old, or in middle school, or in high school. Maybe I missed it, or maybe I just didn't know, or It's so easy. There's so many parents today that carry regrets. Maybe every parent of adult children
There's some things I regret. I could sit here and say.
We've talked about regrets. Sure, of course. It's never too late. It's never too late to begin putting in front of your child, if they're in their 20s or 30s or even older, how much you believe in them, the uniqueness you see in them. Yeah. And listen, that can be weird. Like, we don't talk on this emotional level. We never have, or we've not been in that habit. I'm telling you, you have the courage to do that with your 40-year-old child or your 30-year-old child. It is going to tear down walls and build bond and love in a new dimension for you. Have the courage to say, hey, regardless of the hurt, regardless of the unspoken, all of the things, the regrets, son, daughter, I've always thought this about you. I think you have this trait that I've always admired, we never stop craving that from our parents. I've talked to people well in their adult years who are still wanting the attention of their parents who've been dead for years. We never lose that. So it's not too late to start offering your child that. Another thing I'd say really quickly for parents who feel guilt is I find Jesus' words so encouraging in the story of the prodigal son. If the father in that story is God. If the father has the son who's wandered way off and found himself so lost, if that's the father who is waiting and watching for his son to come home, then you're not alone. Yeah. And I think that's very comforting. And be the parent who's be ready. Be ready for the child who takes a step toward you. Be the parent who is focused on the horizon, like the prodigal father was, with anticipation, wanting to celebrate your child more than express disappointment or hurt. Yeah. Work that out now. Be ready to celebrate, even a step towards you. And I just believe God will meet you in that. You were going to talk about something new you might be starting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, right. So kind of just some practical ending here. I've really just been feeling that God is wanted me to start a group for young moms. I wish I'd had a seasoned mom. I'll call myself a seasoned mom, not an old mom. To kind of just walk with me through the hardships of parenting and just to give advice, answer questions, help where I can. I don't have all the answers. I haven't done everything right. But just would love to offer that. So it's going to be every other Monday night, starting on February the 7th here at our house. And just would love to invite any moms who need encouragement, who want to just be with other moms who are going through the same thing. We'll just get together, have a drink, and just sit and chat and just love on each other. And I just want to encourage you as best as I can on those Monday nights. So emphasis
on the word drink.
Yes.
Maybe.
How else do you get through motherhood? Just kidding.
Well, on that note, I'm gonna pray with you. All right, Jesus. Thank you for loving us the way you have. And thank you for showing us who our Father is. That was the primary role that you had in this world. Your death and resurrection, of course, moves us from death to life. You began restoring with your resurrection, but your primary purpose was to reveal the heart of our Father. Thank you, Father God, for loving us, for being patient, for being the God who disciplines us for our future, for the future you made us for our potential, and the creativity and the life givers you want us to be. Give us patience as parents, regardless of how old we are or where we are on the parenting spectrum. Even for those, God, who aren't parents, but they have parents, they had parents, I pray that you work healing, forgiveness, empathy into all of our lives, our hearts, and may we leave today understanding your heart more for all of us, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, we love you guys a lot.
Yes, we do.
We don't have all the answers. We're learning from you. We learn from a lot of you. So thank you for being a community that allows us to mess up
Yeah.
and
And
do
if you
trial and error.
have questions, want to sit and have coffee, we are certainly open for that. I know
Absolutely.
There's a lot that's probably come out of this today. So yeah.
Absolutely. Have a great
Yay.
week.
Love you guys.